every artist wants to hear that somebody responds to their work. So if you could say in a genuine way, but also in a specific way, something about their work that moved you, motivated you, touched you, you're giving them a gift. You don't need to do more than that.
I'm here today with Carole Kirschner, who's the director of the WGA Showrunner Training Program. You're also the creator and director of the Paramount Writers Mentoring Program. You're also the author of Hollywood Game Plan, How to Land a Job in Film, TV, or Digital Entertainment. I'm going to have to take a breath because I'm just getting started. So many things that must be listed. You've also spent 15 years as a television development executive and former vice president of television for Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. You were also a comedy development exec at CBS. And on top of all of this and much more that I don't even have time to go into because we only have 90 minutes, you're also an international speaker and entertainment career coach. I'm already exhausted and I haven't introduced you yet. Carole, what a wonderful pleasure to have you here. So excited about this today.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. I'm honored to be here, given what your mission is and the fact that we share so many values, I can tell, and so many approaches in the same way to do it, in a humane and yet realistic, no BS, but supportive way.
Yeah, I agree. And I very rarely do I use the word lucky because you have an entire chapter in your book on luck. I feel very much the same way, but there is an element of luck in that I discovered your mentee, Nicole Levy, somewhat randomly through an email message from a publicist. I interviewed her, absolute gem of a person, great conversation. Gem. We're going to put a link in the show notes to that conversation with her, which then led me to discovering you. And then once I discovered you in your book and I'm reading through it, I'm thinking, if I didn't have timestamps on my website and my content over 10 years, you would sue me for plagiarism because you and I are on so many of the same pages, similar frameworks with slightly different names, with very different or very similar missions and values. So just to meet a like-minded peer/expert advisor in the same space in a totally different craft was so enlightening and motivating for me because, as I'm sure you might attest to, when you decide you want to put yourself out there beyond your craft and you actually want to be a teacher or a coach, it's kind of tumbleweeds. You don't have a giant peer group of people that understand what you're going through. It's a relatively new field. So to have somebody that's been as successful as you are, that's validating a lot of the same ideas that I've been brainstorming and helping my students with, needless to say, it's all very exciting for me to know that you and I get to have this conversation on the record today. Yeah,
me too. I'm really looking forward to it, Zack.
So where I actually want to start is, given everything that I listed about development executive and working for studios and all these other areas, you're talking by and large to vast majority of below the line craftspeople. And as soon as we hear studio executives like, no, oh my God, they don't understand us, right? They don't get how this really works. And I want to read from a couple of things from your book that just absolutely bounced off the page. And I've probably never gone into the appendix of somebody's book at the beginning of an interview. However, when I read Appendix A of your book, I'm like, oh my God, you so understand us. So basically what you have is the Hollywood English Writer's Dictionary. To schmooze equals to befriend scum. To pitch equals to grovel shamelessly. To freelance equals to collect unemployment. Producer is a frustrated writer. Writer is a frustrated director. Director is a frustrated actor. And actor is a frustrated human. And of the many others, the last one I pulled up that I thought editors and writers would appreciate the most, try and punch it up, actually equals, I have absolutely no idea what I want.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I say all of that to make it very clear to my audience, you get us. So I'm very, very excited. Very excited about the fact that even though you're on a different side of the business and the industry, you really get both the business of Hollywood and the art and the craft of Hollywood.
Absolutely. And they go together, show, business, the show, the art, the craft, business. It's a business. And you have to approach it that way. You know what I mean?
Here's where I actually want to start because one of the areas where you and I are very similar is when it comes to the idea of pitching yourself or branding yourself or putting yourself out there, you have to be a great storyteller. That to me is the foundation. And there are many frameworks that you have that are similar to mine with slightly different names. But I actually want to start with a part of your story that really intrigues me. when I list off the resume and all the things that you've done at the studio level, the executive level, literally spent years working with Steven Spielberg himself.
Not years, 2 years.
2
Let's
years.
be honest, 2 years.
But 2 years is years. It's not singular. It is years.
I don't want to blow it out of proportion.
Sure. And I appreciate that. But there are a few people that can say I worked 2 years helping develop projects with Spielberg himself.
True.
The point being that it brought up the very first question that I have, which is, why teach? Why be a coach? It doesn't seem like you need to be a career coach or a teacher or an online writer. Like, you clearly have been very successful in the industry. So why decide that I want to go down this path?
Really good question. And there's a couple of answers to that. One is, I always wanted to be a teacher. When I was like 10, I would play teacher. I would Xerox tests and hand it out to my friends. And I just love teaching. I started as a stand-up comic, so I love to perform. And to be able to perform and have it have meaningful content is the best for me. Also, being an executive is fun, but stressful. The perks are amazing, especially working for Steven. The perks are ridiculous. The 3 most powerful words in the business when I was working with him was Steven would like. And that's all you had to say, and you got everything you wanted. But the politics are terrible. I hate politics. I hate that was like 70% of the job, and the creative was 30% of the job. And it just wasn't what I wanted anymore. Now, as a consultant, to the Writers Guild of America and the CBS Paramount, Writers Mentoring Program, and, to people that invite me and hire me to teach, all I have to do is make one person happy. And I love that. And my whole ethos is, how can I make your life easier? No ego. Just let me help you. How can I help you? And living like that is so much less stressful, so much more enjoyable. And does that answer your question?
Not only does it answer my question, but it just goes deep to the root of how similar you and I really are. Because I've been told my entire life, against my will when I was younger, oh, you will be a teacher. My father's a teacher. My mother is a teacher. My aunt is a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. And my wife is a teacher. Oh, by the way, 2 of my sisters are teachers. So education is who we are in my family. And of course, I'm like, I'm not going to be a teacher. I'm going to go to Hollywood, and I'm going to make movies, and I'm going to be a film star, and I'm going to act and direct, and eventually led to editing. And then all of a sudden, same thing as you, climbed to the very highest levels, at least in the TV editing world, and realized I just can't stand the politics. I can't. Yeah. I love the craft. I love the art. I love a lot of the people, not all of them. But by and large, I love the people that I spend my time with, but the politics are just killing me. Also, the hours, the demands, the unrealistic expectations were killing me. And when I realized that my identity was so wrapped up in this one thing that I did, my craft, I'm like, what could I possibly do to make a living? And then it evolved over time to first a podcast, then a blog, then a course, then coaching. It's like, oh, I'm just a 21st century teacher. Like, it's different than the way that my wife does it for LAUSD in a 3rd grade classroom. Right. But I teach for a living / I'm an entrepreneur. And that's where I think that you and I have so many similarities. And absolutely. One of the things that I found really interesting, and kind of where I want to start that'll lead us into this idea of better telling your story, is you talk about these basic qualifications that you think most people need to have. Most of them are what you would expect, but there was one that stuck out to me. And it said that you need to be entrepreneurial, which I agree with. But most people that just want to start at the bottom rung of the ladder and climb the career ladder, they would think, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I just want to be a writer or an editor or a director. But I want to know why you had entrepreneurial on the list. I know why I would have it, but I'm curious why you had it on your list. 2
reasons. One is that regardless of what your job is, you're an editor are you still editing, or is that in your previous life?
For the most part, I've retired. I'm going to be finishing up the final season of Cobra Kai, but other than that, nice. I've retired and I'm not taking any future editing gigs. And this is now what I do all day, every day. So
fabulous. Well, if you were working as an editor, if you work as an editor, if you work as a writer, a director, a cinematographer, your work is your business, and you have to be entrepreneurial. You can do whatever you want, of course. I never say you can't, but for the best outcome, you have to think about your career as your business. And the other part of it is, this is a gig economy. I'm sure that was your experience. That was my experience. And in a gig economy, you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to keep looking for new work. You have to expand out what you do and who you know. And if you are a creator, the reason why you need to be an entrepreneur is, these days, there's no barrier to creating and breaking through. But you have to want to do it. You have to know you have to have the talent, the art, the craft, but you also have to know how to market. And that's entrepreneurship as well. So that's why I do.
We're totally on the same page. And what I always say, similar to what you said, is I'll talk often. One of the things that I do when I do a live event is I say, how many of you in here are business owners? Out of 107 raise their hands. I'm like,
right.
Sorry, how many of you are business owners? 9 hands. I'm like, every hand in this room needs to be up right now. Everybody here not only has a product, you are not only the product, you are also the service. You have to think like an entrepreneur, because there is no world at this point where you get in at the bottom rung of one company, you prove yourself, you get good at your craft, 35 years later, you retire with a gold watch. It just does not work that way. Even in the agency structure, even in the studio structure, nobody in that world climbs one ladder and gets to the top. There is no more ladder. It's all about paths. And that's where I believe, like you do, that having the entrepreneurial spirit and understanding, how do I package? How do I market myself? How do I brand myself? Or more importantly, how do I not have to do any of those if I'm a good storyteller? Right. Mm-hmm. That's where I think you and I are in such agreement. So one of the areas I want to start going into is helping entrepreneurs / creatives / artists / storytellers. How do we structure our story? Because we don't even think about ourselves as storytellers. We think we have to sell ourselves. And I don't think that's necessary. And you talk a lot about the different parts of your story, types of story, how to structure it. I talked about this some with Chris Vogler, who wrote The Writer's Journey. I want to link to that episode and pair it with this one. But I would like to know, from your perspective, how can I structure my story so I can make sure that I go down the path that I want to and I surround myself with the right people?
Sure. Well, what I call it, and I call it in the book, is I call it your personal PR strategy. Again, if you have a business, you need a PR strategy. And I think it's made up of 3 things. One is your personal log line. And this is connected to writing, screenwriting, your personal log line, which answers the question, what do you do? And the thing is, in Hollywood, I don't know about elsewhere, but in Hollywood, everyone wants to know what you do. The truth is, they want to know what you can do for them, but they're going to ask you, what do you do? And this is the 30 seconds answer, 30 to 60 second. Then there's what I call your personal nuggets. And I stole that term from Glenn Mazzara, who is the showrunner on The Walking Dead. And what they are is, they're the anecdotes of your life. They're the gold of your life. And this harkens back to being a storyteller. They are the stories of your life, and you need to be able to tell them. I once heard a senior level executive say, one of the biggest sins in Hollywood is being boring, punishable by non-employment. In this business, regardless of what your job is, you need to be engaging and you need to be memorable. And nuggets help you be memorable. And then the last thing is what I call your personal A story. And it's a chronological narrative of your life with you as the protagonist. It highlights what makes you memorable and different and your successes. And the narrative drive is where you started, what you had to overcome to get to where you are, and where you want to go, where you are now, where you want to go. I'm sure you've said this before, but we're all hardwired for story. And that where you started, what you had to overcome, how you overcame it, where you're going, that's story. And a personal A story goes on for about 2 minutes, and it answers the question. And for anybody who's been in an interview, that It's tell me about yourself. People are going to ask you that. I don't know anybody who's been in this business who hasn't been asked that a number of times. And your personal A story is how you answer that.
Yeah, this is
So, yeah,
one of those areas where you and I have different names for the exact same process. Like literally, you should be suing me for plagiarism because I can't believe how similar our approaches are. The way that I talk about it is that you have to understand how to tell the story of where you are in your hero's journey. And I always say that the
yeah,
structure is here's what I'm doing now. So, what do you currently do in your framework? Here's where I'm going next. And then the third piece that I have is here are the obstacles. Here are the things that are stopping me and where I'm seeking guidance or support. So you can
ah,
surround yourself with the mentors and the advisors that are like, ooh, I'm really engaged and interested in your story. And I might be able to help you with this obstacle because the hero's journey is all about watching somebody accept their call to adventure and watching them go through this change and this transformation. So I think what you call the personal A story is just what I call structuring your own hero's journey so that people know
right.
here's where you are, where you're going next, so that I then know how can I help you after, of course, like you talk about and I do as well. I want to put myself out there to make other people's lives easier and help them first.
I was just going to say, I think a slight difference between what your hero's journey and my personal A story is mine is the story of what's happened up until this moment to
Mm-hmm.
give them context of who they are. And then from there, it is where are you going? And I love that you would put in the obstacles to that and let people sort of lean in and see if they want to help you because most people do. I mean, people think that Hollywood is everybody's a jerk. And, there's plenty of jerks, but everybody got here some way by somebody helping them. And most people are decent. And if they respond and resonate with your story, they'll give you at least 15 to 20 minutes of their time. Do you know what I mean? And if you impress them, we all want to find that, rock star and then, help them and sort of take a little credit for that. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and the thing that I always mention, it's same exact conversation with my students where when they first come to me, they're like, "Well, everybody's busy and they're more important and nobody wants to help." And I say, if you learn how to better tell your story, it's not that people don't want to help you, it's that they don't know how to help you. And if the only
Yes,
way they can help you is by giving you a job or passing around your resume, you are going to strike out 99 times out of 100.
exactly.
But if you make it
Exactly.
clear how they can help you, by and large, most people want to. It's tapping into
Yes.
that, right? That
Yes.
like you said, we're wired for storytelling. It's kind of a side note. Are you familiar with Will Storr, the author Will Storr? He wrote a book called The Science of Storytelling.
No, no,
So I
no.
did a recent podcast with him the same time I did with Chris Vogler. The reason being, I am obsessively curious about things, and I was fixated on the question, why? Why are we hardwired for storytelling? Why am I so obsessed with stories? And Will Storr answered this question in like a 250-page book about just
Yeah.
evolutionary, from an evolutionary perspective, a neurological perspective. Here's why we've needed stories throughout all of human civilization. And it was fascinating. So I won't go any more into that because he and I already did. But if you're not
Right.
familiar with it, you might find it interesting because when you say we're hardwired, now I understand why based on the conversation that I had with him, which is why it's so important that to me, that this is an absolutely essential part of your arsenal. And
Sure.
going back to this idea of where we were talking about being entrepreneurs and the gig economy, I'm going to, at the risk of not getting on a soapbox or starting a TED talk, my 30-second version of this, which is very similar to one of the things that you say, is if you go into Google, and I've now tested this with Chat GPT, and say,
Mhm.
how do I become a doctor? Or how do I become a brain surgeon? As you would say, I know exactly how to do it. It's simple. It's very challenging. Here are the steps. Here's the timeline. As long as I
Right.
meet certain benchmarks, I can literally become a brain surgeon. How do I become a writer in Hollywood? Well, you got to pay your dues and put yourself out there and network, network, network. It's like that's not a structure. That's not a path. I know those are
Right.
important components. And I just firmly believe that our education system is so wildly outdated in preparing us to weather the gig economy and tell our stories and pitch our ideas and brand ourselves, that I really feel there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way that we educate people about how they actually navigate the paths of the gig economy, which goes back
Exactly.
to this idea of being so entrepreneurial.
Yes. And I've taught at USC and UCLA and different places. And in film schools, when they graduate you with a degree and about $200,000 worth of debt, they don't teach you about the business and how you navigate the business and how you break in and how you succeed. And that's in large part why I wrote the book, because people were coming out of film schools and not even going to film schools and not having the tools to get what they wanted and needed. So yeah, I agree with you entirely.
So I wanted to do that zoom out for a second, just to make sure I didn't kind of neglect that. I wanted to give people the framing, because so often, and I'm sure you hear it from your students, especially those that are more seasoned in the industry, if they're coming out of college, there's still a lot to learn, right? But if somebody comes to you specifically with career transitions, of which I deal a lot more with that, there's this guilt or the shame of, why don't I know this already? Why can't I figure this out? It's because nobody taught you ever. So why would you expect to know this stuff? And I'm sure you deal with the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have clients that go from pre-WGA to showrunners. So I know the whole spectrum of people and what their issues are. And I certainly have dealt with people who have made a transition from a life outside of the entertainment industry, but their dream has always been to be in the entertainment industry, often as writers or directors. And I have recovering lawyers, recovering doctors who come and pursue these fields. Yeah.
Yeah, I get a lot of engineers. That seems to be
really
one. Yeah, people that have gone out of the engineering field. I can never remember the term, but it was a photoelectrobiochemist, I think is the right term. Basically, scientists that harness the power of the sun, like solar panels and all the other crazy science that I don't understand. So I've talked to a lot of people in varying industries, and it's always the same thing. I'm supposed to know this stuff. I'm like, no, you're not. Same thing with time management. All these things that we're never taught. We're given dates and we're given timelines and memorization and formulas and calculations, but there's never this critical thinking about, how do I design the story of my own life?
Yes, totally agree.
And I feel that's a gap that you've just so well filled specifically for writers. And now that we've kind of taken this broad view, now I want to zoom back into where we were before. And I want to go deeper into the nuance of telling our story. So from your perspective, we have a personal log line, which, like you said, 30 seconds or less. It's not even really an elevator pitch. It's just, here are the basics about me. Then we've got the A story. Then we have these nuggets or these anecdotes. So I want to break these down. So give me an example of a really bad log line that you might hear at a party or a mixer.
Okay. A really bad one.
Bad one. Let's start with the bad ones and let's improve them. Let's put some hypothetical person on the hot seat right now.
Okay. Yeah, I like a lot of different things. I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm also an actor and a producer. And I haven't, I'm working on a lot of projects right now and a lot of interest in the business for it. And
you know what? I'm going to stop you right there. I've got a friend over there. I'm just going to go say hi to them. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you literally had a friend.
No. Like that. If you were doing that 30 seconds, I'm like, no, I'm out. Right.
That's right.
So what's wrong with that?
Part of it is it's too many things. It's too many things. I don't think you're serious. If you're serious, you might want to be a writer, producer, writer, actor. You're going to be a writer, actor, director. There are hyphenates, but to just reel off all these things you want to do, I don't believe you. I'm not taking you seriously. The other is you're rambling and I'm bored. And like you, it's like, excuse me, got to go get a drink. It needs to be concise. It needs to be compelling. There was nothing really compelling about that. And it trailed off and it was, I said all the reasons why.
I didn't even let you trail off because I was so bored and I had other people that I wanted to meet. I was 30 seconds in, and I'm sure everybody has seen this. You're in the middle of conversation and they're talking and you're already thinking, who's the next person I want to talk to?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What? Say that again. I didn't hear you. Right.
Yes.
Because it's it's boring rambling and it's not specific.
Yes. And you just said something and I forgot what it was, but it was really good. It was really good.
So, given all of that, now let's talk about how do we make this better. If I come in and say, well, and I think the way to frame this even more clearly, and you alluded to this already, but I feel like if you can nail the answer to 3 questions, you're on the road to success in this industry. The first of which is, so what do you do, or what are you working on as a variation of that? Tell me about yourself, and do you have any other questions? You can answer
Right.
those 3 questions really, really well, whether it's in a networking perspective or it's in a job interview, you're going to be in the top 5%. So right now we're in the context of we're at a mixer and it's, so what are you working on, or what do you do? And you just gave the really bad version. Now let's
Right.
workshop this and give somebody the really good version of their log line.
Well, I'm the director of the WGA Showrunner Training Program. I created and am the director of the CBS Paramount Writers Mentoring Program. I love working with people one-on-one also. So I'm an entertainment career coach as well. I spent 15 years as a development executive at CBS and at Steven Spielberg's first Amblin television division.
I love it. So my name is Zack Arnold. I'm a recently retired Hollywood film and TV editor. Did it for about 20 years. Most recent show was lead editor and associate producer on Cobra Kai. I've worked on Empire, Glee. Burn Notice is another one of my big shows.
Oh.
And I'm in the process of building a career strategizing and career coaching company, as well as podcasting. And essentially, I work with artists, creatives, and storytellers, and I help them build the more balanced, more fulfilling, and sustainable creative careers that they deserve.
Perfect. We've got our story down, Zack.
We've got our story down.
What do you think?
Exactly. The key here to me is that it's going to make it really easy for me to understand in less than a minute. Is this a conversation that's both even worth having? And number 2, can it be mutually beneficial? What I always tell my students, and I think we're on the same page, it's never about listening and thinking, ooh, what can this person do for me? Let me see what position they're in and how can they help me? All I'm thinking when somebody is telling their story is, where can I help them? And that to me is the mindset shift that makes all the difference in the world. And you've got the same strategies in your book. So talk to me more about how we shift the mindset from it's about me to instead it's about you.
Right. We really are on the exact same page because the reason why most people hate networking, and I hate the term networking, I really love connecting much more because it can just be about connecting or making, if not a friend, somebody you're genuinely interested in knowing, is I think the reason why people hate it is they feel smarmy about it. They feel like somebody's going to do this to them or they're going to do it to somebody, where they talk at them for 5 minutes and they talk all about themselves and they don't pay attention to you. And if it's you, I've heard, my clients have said, I feel bad because I feel like I should be getting something from them. I don't want to do it. I don't know how to do it. And I just would rather not do it. So one of the best ways to take the pressure off is exactly what you're saying, which is go into every conversation with not what can they do for me, takes the pressure off if you say, how can I help them as they're talking? And I also believe it should be 70% them, 30% you. And be curious. And you said you were curious, Zack. It's be curious. Ask questions. And if you think about the people that you like when you meet them, they have this upbeat energy and they're interested in knowing you and you want to know them more. So it mutually beneficial relationships is what it's all about. And it's that network of people that are going to help you throughout your career. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And one of my favorite lines you had in your entire book about this, literally the vocabulary word networking. I think most of the people, if not all of them in my audience, will relate to this line. If you say the word networking to some people, they get excited. You say that same word to other people and they start to hyperventilate. I know which group I have listening to this one right now, and it's not the ones that get excited about the word networking. And if they said, well, can you just give me 5 good questions to ask in a networking conversation or to send via cold outreach email or via social media, I would say you're asking the wrong question. Because if I give you the questions, but your mindset hasn't shifted already from it's not about me, it's about them, you're still going to lead towards what can I get out of the conversation. But yeah, once it's about how can I help them, then you ask totally different questions because you have a different objective. And I dive deeper into the science that proves that across all industries, has nothing to do with entertainment, but the number one scientifically proven way to get